Voidmage Gamer is now partnered with Flipside Gaming, so you can use the promo code on their website, all caps Voidmage, to get 10% off all orders $10 or more. It's a great way that you can support both Flipside Gaming and Voidmage Gamer's channel. Hello everyone, welcome back to another top 10 Commander video. Got a really big one here, the top 10 best blocks for Commander. These are really the ones that helped shape what Commander is today. Of course, a lot of these sets were not made with the awareness of Commander as a format. Commander really wasn't around during a lot of these sets, but it still is important to go over them because fundamentally what Commander is about having a sense of direction. You're going to hear me say this a lot, an overall identity, almost like an RPG and whatever favorite video game you have. It's about customization, feeling like you made your own choices, and being deep is just as important as being wide when it comes to a set. You don't just want a wide variety of cards that are powerful, you want to feel like you're actually doing something with a set goal in mind. There are a ton of blocks to choose from, 26 in total, give or take a couple. It's really weird when you come to define an actual block. Some people wouldn't consider the new Ravnica sets as an actual block. Some people might not consider Ice Age, Alliances, and Homelands to be a block. Some people do. As far as priorities for this list, I'm more focused on function over flair. So just because something like the Tempest block, you have a lot of expensive cards in Stronghold, it doesn't mean I think the block was that important for Commander. So you can have a block where there isn't a lot of big value cards, so long as it serves a purpose for Commander, I'm going to include it. Honorable mentions. A lot of the modern sets, something like Kaladesh, were created with the awareness of Commander, but believe it or not, Kaladesh didn't really offer that much for Commander. You have some win cons, things like Paradox Engine, Aetherflux Reservoir, but if you go and actually look at the mechanics, something like Energy was not meant for Commander, and it does absolutely little to nothing in Commander. So Kaladesh, if it didn't happen, Commander would still be fine. Innistrad's a big flavor set. I mean, that's all I can really say about it. There's a focus on some tribes like vampires and werewolves. A lot of people love Innistrad for that reason, but when it comes down to actually talking about the fundamentals of the format, Innistrad might offer you a couple cards here or there, but it really just stands alone as its own product. Just didn't really contribute that much to Commander. And Kamigawa, same thing, a big flavor set. Lacks the support that Innistrad had though, but if you're interested in ninjas, spirits, snakes, and rats, Kamigawa gave you that support. You had rats that actually looked like Master Splinter. Just freaking awesome. So with the top 10, number 10 is Khans of Tarkir. This was a block that's not filled with money unless you count the fetch lands, so people tend to dismiss Khans of Tarkir for that reason. I think it serves a purpose for Commander when you're talking about fooling around with the color pie, because we really needed more support in these colors, needed more Mardu cards, Sultai cards, so on. The downside, and a reason why I have it at number 10, is because the original Commander product satisfied this need before the set actually came out. So the one thing that it has going for it as a block, it didn't even do it first. What it does do, that I'm willing to keep it on the list, is give a sense of identity by giving you factions. You have the different Khans, you have Naga and Sultai, you have Orcs and Mardu. There's an identity there, no doubt about it, but really the big draw to this block is getting more support for 3 color combinations. The Commander options are fun, you get a wide variety of them, even in Fate Reforged, but nothing that I would say is exceptional support for the format, or at least anything revolutionary. It brought back mechanics like Delve and Morph. We've already had these, so not even the first to arrive at that. Number 9 is Alara. Kind of the same thing, but only it was actually the first to provide support for the different shard colors. I mean, we've technically had Grixis cards before, we've had Esper cards before, but a lot of those were older cards from Legends. The sets they were in did not have the entire focus around a certain faction like these do, so again, you have a sense of direction. But a downside that I'm going to talk about now is although you have a faction, it's kind of hard to explain it fundamentally. Like if you were to go color by color and say, well, what makes Esper about artifacts? Can you actually say why black is necessary? Or if we talk about Bant, what is necessary about blue? We're going to talk about this later on in the list when we're going over even better factions. But Alara is just a little bit better than Khans of Tarkir at offering support for 3 color cards. Number 8 is Theros. Bet you didn't expect to see Theros, another post-2011 set with awareness of Commander, but it doesn't really matter because you can tell there really isn't that intention of making cards for Commander. The closest thing would be the gods, which really carry this block. The whole mechanic of devotion in order to make this indestructible enchantment a creature is incredibly flavorful, and it's one of the most fun things to build a deck around, which is why they make really good commander options. It's all about building your deck in order to take full advantage of what your god does. So you have Aetherios, God of Passage, you have Xenagos, God of Revels, and while there's nothing really unique about what they do individually, it's hard for me to say that there were any cards that had a better impact in Commander within the last 5 or 6 years than the gods. They're going to age incredibly well, the monocolored ones, the two-color ones. The value in the set is without a doubt the devotion mechanic and the underrated focus on enchantments. That was another thing. The mechanic of Constellation. Up to this point, there wasn't really a huge emphasis on enchantments or auras. It's incredibly unique to this block. I feel like with a bit more support, a lot of the cards in Theros are going to seem a bit more fleshed out. So a plane that you're probably going to hear a lot when it comes to revisiting, very important for Commander. Number 7 is Urza's block. Now, probably what a lot of people would consider the best block in Magic. In terms of overall value, in terms of flavor, lore, a lot of people love Urza's block. The following years would become a huge question mark. So what you really have here is a point in Magic's history, the last block on the reserve list, filled with some of the most influential cards in Commander, some that are just good in Eternal formats, period, like Yawgmoth's Will, Gaia's Cradle. The main thing against this set is the reserve list itself, making it harder to get these cards. You're never going to get another Palinchron, so you have to go for the Urza's Legacy one. Some of these cards are not as expensive as some of the ones on the Tempest block. You have Mox Diamond, that's well over $200. Gaia's Cradle clearly being the most expensive card from this block. It's going to age really well. The cards are incredibly valuable, but probably the biggest reason why I have it on this list is because it was one of the last blocks before we reached the modern era of Magic. A lot of people would consider this to be the best block before the modern era. It's looking like it's going to have a bigger impact on competitive EDH. Going to be a little bit harder for casual players to get their hands on some of these cards. Number 6 is the Zendikar block. A big theme with Zendikar was exploration. So right off the bat, you see a ton of landfall strategies, which are a big part of Commander. There are a whole bunch of lands matter strategies. Even if it isn't straight up landfall, we have things like the Gitrog monster that take advantage of the fetch lands. Which, speaking of fetch lands, Zendikar was the set that introduced us to the enemy-colored fetches. Very good for Eternal formats, but Zendikar really just has its own identity as being this raw landscape. Since it is about exploration, things seem a little bit more natural, more primitive on Zendikar, like you're venturing out into the wilderness and you don't know what to expect. The vampires have their own identity on Zendikar. And of course, later on in the block, we would see the Eldrazi, which are an even bigger part of this block. A lot of people love the Eldrazi, and to have a whole block dedicated to this impending doom, which they would pick up on in battle for Zendikar, albeit a lot less successful. Trust me, there was a point in time where the lore and the characters around Zendikar were not as exhausted. So solid tribe support, great lands, an emphasis on exploration, that just goes incredibly well with Commander as a format. And then number 5 is Scars of Mirrodin. Big time impact on Commander whenever we talk about artifacts. Having what is essentially an artifact block the second time we would visit Mirrodin might feel like a bit of a rehash, since the main draw to the original Mirrodin was artifacts, equipments, etc. But what really carries this set is the tail end of the block, New Phyrexia, where we get to see the impressive Praetor creatures, where you see it kind of follows that same trend of Zendikar, where there's impending doom and the eventual takeover of the enemy. And the Phyrexians are quite the iconic enemy in Magic the Gathering. What you get with this set is a little bit of the same, although I would add the original Mirrodin had a lot more powerful cards. And although it is Mirrodin, not everything has to do with artifacts. I should make that clear. It just happens to be a really big focus. In the number 4, we have Return to Ravnica. Some people would say Ravnica's the best plane in Magic the Gathering. A lot of that has to do with the fact that the characters, the factions, the guilds are so well fleshed out. You know what the Orzhov is. We could do the math, we could add white and black, and why that contradiction is so valuable for the identity. And that just seems to be what Ravnica is, a plane about identity. Return to Ravnica, again, it's not going to offer you a ton of value. So if you're looking at a set in terms of making money, you get Shockland reprints, but even the Shocklands are not as expensive expensive as they used to be. So no, the real value here is just continuing to flesh out the guilds of Ravnica. And like I mentioned before, Commander is all about identity. Without that identity, you're just playing a bunch of good cards with no sense of direction. Ravnica is the plane where the characters just have that direction built in. Very well designed block, even if it doesn't feel like a significant improvement, even if it doesn't add any value. Just a continuation of anything Ravnica just adds so much for Commander because we have the legendary creatures for each guild, and there's 10 of them. And while they don't all make good Commander options, it's the fact that if you really wanted to play Golgari, you should probably have a lot to choose from that make it feel like you're playing a Golgari deck. And after just experiencing the third Ravnica block, or what people would call a block, even if it feels watered down at this point, Ravnica has been nothing but good for the Magic brand. Number 3 is Lorwyn / Shadowmoor. I have to include Shadowmoor because they're technically different blocks. Lorwyn, Morningtide, Shadowmoor, Eventide. One was focused on daytime, one was focused on nighttime. Whatever, that's not important. If you love tribes, here we're bringing up factions again with tribes, and it is so important. Not only is it important to have an identity with the colors themselves, but rather the creatures. If you have a solid creature tribe, you could potentially just forget about the colors. This is true for merfolk. I mean, these are sea creatures. What do they have to do with white? What do they even have to do with black even? So even though color-wise it may not make any sense, it doesn't have to if the tribe makes sense. You can play 3-color vampires in Mardu. The emphasis isn't on the colors, it's on the mechanics with the tribe. And in Lorwyn / Shadowmoor, what you have here is the best emphasis on tribes. There hasn't been a block that did it better. Even if you don't get exactly the tribe you want, you have the changelings. So if you need a filler creature, just play a mirror entity or whatever changeling happens to fit in your colors. Lorwyn has an incredible sense of identity because of this. Some of the more unique creature types like treefolk and kithkin, while they may not have that much support, it still counts. It still matters that you get this different playstyle. Fundamentally, you're improving what Commander is. It's all about that direction. If you want to go with merfolk, you're probably going to go with some merfolk from the Lorwyn Shadowmoor blocks. And then number 2, we have Mirrodin. Now I mentioned after Urza's Saga, there was a big question mark on the status of Magic the Gathering. You had a 3-year period there before Mirrodin where the game just started to suck. Just uninspiring mechanics. You needed something refreshing, something with a bit of identity that didn't need to lean too much on the past. Basically all of the reasons why I love Scars of Mirrodin as a block apply to the original Mirrodin block. Only Mirrodin has formed the backbone of what Commander is. When you think about the importance of artifacts, equipment for the format, we wouldn't have things like Lightning Greaves, Skull Clamp if we didn't have Mirrodin. The fact that so many artifact decks dominate this format, a tribute to the power of the original Mirrodin, because a lot of those cards like Darksteel Forge, Mycosynth Lattice are all over the place in Commander. So not only does it get credit for being one of the sets that helped save the game, it deserves a ton of credit for shaping what Commander is. We would not have cards like Eternal Witness, cards that see play everywhere, if it were not for the power of Mirrodin as a block. But we have one block that I feel is the absolute best for Commander. That is Ravnica City of Guilds. This block really helped save Magic. Mirrodin was just the first step. Some people didn't like Kamigawa, but once we hit Ravnica, everything was saved. There is not a single plane where the characters know who they are better than Ravnica. Fundamentally, you can take a look at whatever color you have, pair it up with another one, and explain what that guild does perfectly. Let's just take a look at Simic. Blue wants to learn a lot. Green wants to grow a lot. So they both, in a sense, want to evolve, which forms the foundation of the Simic. Well, white likes to gain life. It also likes to heal, restore, fortify. Black likes to pay life. It also enjoys sacrificing. So these playstyles contradict each other, but that's the entire focus on the Orzhov guild, is that contradiction. So you can go in each guild and explain it perfectly, whereas you can't do that with Khans of Tarkir or Shards of Alara. It's so difficult to say, well, this is what Sultai is. It's basically basically Dimir with green or it's Golgari with blue. If you have to go color by color and explain it, and you go back to Shards of Alara, does Bant really need blue? They're basically just soldiers, right? But with Ravnica, it all makes sense, and it's so satisfying that it makes sense, because that's what you want to do as a player. You want to build something, and it's a lot easier to build something if you can understand it. Probably what I would say is the best block, because even built without the awareness of Commander as a format, the legendary creatures have aged well. Teysa Orzhov Scion is still a brilliant option. Momir Vig, kind of aged, but still pretty fun. Just fantastic for the format, and you could say that about anything Magic the Gathering related. There's a reason why we went back twice. There really hasn't been a set where everything feels as fleshed out as it did on Ravnica. So whether you feel fatigued with Ravnica or not, there's no denying this is probably the most important block in Magic the Gathering history, for Commander at the very least. But anyway, that's going to do it for this video. Let me know what you think about these 10 blocks that I chose, and remember, these are blocks, not individual sets. You could go ahead and say Alpha, Beta, Unlimited were more influential, but that's a pretty big softball, and also not a block. But anyway, you guys have a wonderful day. Void here signing off. See you all next video.